Not sure if you can relate, but my 20s sucked. I was supposed to do well by all means, especially under the standards of my parents. I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, but struggled to find work after college, and more importantly, find work I actually enjoyed. I felt this overwhelming feeling of failure, loneliness, and lack of direction because I didn't know what to do next. I wasn't like my peers who got nice engineering jobs afterwards, or one of those 18-year-olds making millions off of drop shipping. I was broke. I was still caught up in the mindset of trying to meet the expectations of my parents, but worst of all, I wasn't meeting my own expectations. I was extremely unfulfilled. What brought me satisfaction beforehand wasn't working anymore. And think about it. I come back home from being away from school. I mean, yeah, sure, I'm trying to save all the money I could, but after having all of these life experiences and then leading me back to the same place I started, I was just left with this constant feeling and thought of, is this it? But pretty recently, I feel like I've started to get a handle on this thing called life and actually live out my youth on my own terms. I've become at peace with my journey, and through trials and tribulations of trying several different things that I thought would bring me fulfillment, to now being exactly where I want to be, finding my dream career and taking control of my life, sitting in a room full of millionaires and having the power to influence a portion of their journey, shaking hands with people I never would have thought to shake hands with, and realizing that the opportunities in this thing called life are endless. These realizations didn't happen just because I grew older. I learned that if I didn't waste my 20s on these 7 things, I could have expedited my journey. One of the first things I would do differently is that I wouldn't waste time and energy hyper-focusing on my weaknesses. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle culture and think I need to work all day, every day, sacrifice sleep, and push myself to the brink of exhaustion. And well, to be quite honest, I fell for it. I thought I needed to know everything to succeed. And so I dove into construction with my engineering degree in hand, hoping to leverage it to get into real estate. And the only problem? I was absolute trash at construction. At the time, I was only building restaurants. I had to measure certain spaces, and multiple times I got them so wrong, which eventually cost the company thousands of dollars. And I didn't even know the difference between a ton of tools. But I mean, I ended up learning the terminology, learned the process, got really granular with the building process. But after 3 years, I looked back and realized I still didn't own any real estate. Sure, I knew the basics and I could have crossed over some of that knowledge, but I realized I was doing mostly busy work that wasn't entirely important to the process of actually owning real estate. I mean, it could definitely help, but more importantly, I really was not passionate about it. I was just trying to impress others and validate my place in the hustle culture. And looking back, if I had been more honest with myself about my strengths in sales, building relationships, and customer service, I could have streamlined my journey by years. I could have focused on what I actually enjoyed and excelled at instead of trying to know everything about a field that didn't interest me, nor was I really any good at. And to me, I saw this like driving a car. I didn't need to know how the engine works, understand the HVAC system to drive it. In the same way, I didn't need to know everything about construction to succeed in real estate. And just like in college, where I thought I needed to get an engineering degree to build a successful product, I realized that my ignorance and focusing on the minute details was holding me back. So now, working with a commercial real estate firm focused on building relationships, sales, and negotiations, I'm actually thriving because I already had a natural cadence and ability to do so. And now I'm just sharpening my tools. So I would focus on my unique talents and be unapologetically me. Second thing I would do differently is focus on controlling my environment instead of searching for motivation. As mentioned in one of my favorite books of all time, Atomic Habits, motivation is overvalued. environment often matters more. I remember I would always come to a point where I would be super motivated to work out or make a ton of money. I would listen to David Goggins, Kobe Bryant, Eric Thomas, and I would be super motivated for a month, but then I would fall off and go back to the same place I started. This book helped me realize two things. I have to control my environment, and consistency is key in order to do so. And so, first off, controlling my environment. What's interesting about our environment is that we typically only credit our environment when things go wrong. For example, when I couldn't find a job, I would blame the economy. Or if I lost a basketball game, I would blame the refs. Or if I was late to work, I would blame traffic. On the other hand, if I got a job, won a basketball game, or got to work on time, I would think it was because of my own abilities and talents without any regards to my environment. My environment plays a powerful role in leading to success. And motivation could only take me so far, but if I was able to control my environment and build better habits towards reaching my goal, it was way easier to achieve. It's like if you're on a diet, but you live in a candy store, you're bound to eat some candy. And it's really vital to control your environment and cater it to the person you want to be like. So start feeding your body with healthy food, healthy podcasts, positive energy. And so I started to implement this concept in the book called habit stacking, which is essentially streamlining my habits that'll carry from one to the other in order for me to accomplish more within that day. Now, within my environment, I didn't want to burn out. So I learned to focus on just getting 1% better every day. And if I did that, I wouldn't get burnt out and could still see an immense improvement by the end of the year instead of going 100% one day and then doing nothing for 4 days. And I actually saw this in working out. I would go super hard in my workout and then take 4 days off, but then realize I didn't make any progress and back to square one. It's easier to stay consistent if my environment supports the actual habits. But what I've learned, and I'm coining this from Alex Hormozi, and I'm not sure if it's his quote or not, but I'll make it his quote today. People's goals don't make people unique. Their habits and actions do. There are plenty of people out there that are looking to be millionaires or have six packs, but do they have the environment, the healthy habits, and actions in place to do so? And if I want to achieve consistent success, I have to play the game of life in an environment that works in my favor. Winners often win because their surroundings facilitate their victories, making it easier for them to succeed. And so controlling my environment, it didn't only apply to objects. It works the same with people as well, which brings me to my next point. The third thing I'd do differently if I could turn back time is to have focused on attracting people who share the same vision as I do. When I started in commercial real estate, everyone was eager to give me unsolicited advice, family, friends, colleagues, but unfortunately, most of it wasn't really relevant to me because, well, quite frankly, they weren't where I wanted to be. So I realized it was essential to be selective with the guidance I sought and to only listen to people who had achieved what I wanted to achieve. Now, listen, I'm not saying you should uproot your life and ditch all your friends and family who don't align with your aspirations, because that's just pretentious and rude. But you got to understand that not everyone will support your dreams, and that is okay. My parents were coming from a good place, trying to help me with their advice that didn't apply to me, but someone else has already accomplished my dream or come close to it, and I ended up valuing their advice more while still loving my parents unconditionally. It's an understanding that we all have our own paths, and I don't have to fit every bucket people put me in. And I found that building my own network was the key to attracting those like-minded individuals who could enhance my vision. I learned that it's about finding the right people and building meaningful relationships that truly helped me in reaching my ambitions. But there was only one way I could build my network, which brings me to my fourth point. The fourth thing I would do differently is to network more effectively by adding value. However, avoid asking questions like, how can I add value to you, or saying I'll work for free? Because these statements may not be coming off the way you think they're coming off. Asking how I can add value to you is one of the worst questions to ask. And what sucks is that it comes with good intentions, but asking this question sucks because it comes off as insincere and you're putting the responsibility on them. It implies that you don't know the person or their problems well enough, and you're essentially asking the person to do the work of figuring out how you can help them. This can be frustrating, especially if the person you're asking is busy or overwhelmed with their own responsibilities. And so your job is to identify their pain points and offer a valuable solution. Similarly, offering to work for free is problematic, not because you're valuing yourself at $0, but because you're not valuing the other person's time. Most likely, they would need to invest time in training you, and their time is likely more valuable than that. Instead, make yourself worthy of their time and make yourself more valuable. And here are the two ways that I made myself more valuable. The first way is I invested in myself. I took educational courses, learned skills that could benefit my own network. All of my knowledge was gained online through both free and paid resources. The second way is that I invested in my network. As the saying goes, your network is your net worth. I connected with like-minded individuals by joining masterminds, attending local meetups, and investing my time in these relationships. And while some experiences weren't fruitful, others were rewarding. And once I found my solid group, I looked for ways to add value. Starting out with no experience, this was as simple as connecting one person from my network to another. And by doing this, I became known as the connector within the industry. And I actually applied this with my former podcast to break into the commercial real estate space. I use my podcasts as an excuse to network with other industry professionals since no one would talk to me for an hour of their time. But as my network started to grow, I was able to connect my guests with other guests if I thought they were of value to each other. And so when networking, I realized to not focus on proving my knowledge. I learned to speak less and listen more and really take into account my fifth point. I wish I would have realized that reputation is everything. People pay attention to people who constantly show up, and you might not even know who's watching. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't really do anything that could tarnish my reputation, or at least as far as I know. But I learned very early on to avoid the saying of fake it till you make it. Be authentic and unapologetically you, because people can tell right off the bat if someone is being fake with them or just trying to sell them. And people don't want to work with that. People respect others that are transparent and honest. Nobody respects a liar. And when I was just starting out in commercial real estate, there was no way that I could add value to these millionaires. I didn't have any capital to invest, didn't have any skills at the time. When I was raising capital, I couldn't lie and say I've done this before. I couldn't lie and say I have access to a ton of millionaires because I didn't. Shoot, I had a professional hip hop dancing background, and that didn't scream millionaire right off the bat. But it wasn't my background that helped me gain that credibility. It was my actions of consistently showing up, scheduling meetings, being prompt, going to meetups, expanding my network, and continuing to just show up every day until people start to notice. It's very hard to build up your reputation, and it takes a lot of time, but it is so easy to destroy your reputation. Now, as you're building up your reputation, you have to actually be good at something to continue to grow. And so for my number 6, I wish I would have focused on gaining skills instead of gaining a salary. Instead of focusing on the title of who I wanted to be, I would focus on the skills of what that person has. I'm not just talking about the skills that we put on our resume. Those count, but actual skills that can lead you to a point where you want to be. We've all heard the common saying of only get paid for what you're worth. I would try and get the highest amount in terms of a salary or a raise, but the challenge with this type of thinking is that it's putting a monetary value in both a good way and also a bad way. There is a difference between feeling validated by the amount of income you're making versus determining yourself how much you should be getting. Because at the end of the day, especially when it comes to compensation, it doesn't really matter what we think. The market decides to pay us for what we're worth. Yeah, sure, I can try and get that salary increase, but all that's really doing is continuing to feed the monster of external validation, knowing that I got a higher salary. Now, a company can offer more or give more responsibilities, but when I apply for another company, they're not only looking at the experience I have, but more importantly, the skill set I have that justifies the experience. And so, starting out at 20, it was hard because I didn't have many skills. It is hard to demand a good salary and get paid for what I think I'm worth. I would hear my friends say they're making this amount, and now I'm thinking that I can make it too. But in reality, they already had an internship or a skill set, and I didn't have those skill sets just yet. And that's okay. And looking back on my construction experience, if I wanted to own a construction company, I was gaining the skill set to do so, learning the ins and outs of the business to where I could have cashed in at a later point. But the problem was that I didn't really like construction all that much, like y'all know. And I really wanted to be good at raising capital for commercial real estate projects. So I looked to build this skill set off of that in sales, negotiation, marketing, strategies on selling higher ticket price products. I wanted to build a skill set so valuable that I can write my own paycheck and not let the market dictate my own value. The last thing I would have done differently in my 20s is that I wish I found the knees over toes guy a lot sooner. I love playing basketball and I love dancing, but my knees just kept getting worse. And I would always joke that I had 11itis. If you have not heard of what that is, it's worse than tendonitis. And I actually said that in one of my interviews, and I still got the job, even though the interviewer didn't laugh. But in all seriousness, I thought my days of playing basketball and dancing were over. My hips were tight, lower back was hurting. I just thought I had the knees of a 50-year-old person, and it was inevitable that this was going to happen. And I thought I reached my fate a lot sooner. But if I started this program back when I was in my early 20s, I could have prevented so much knee pain that I probably could be dunking by now. And it's all about strengthening all of the muscles below and around your knee to be able to absorb the impact and create a really solid foundation. So now my knee pain is minimal. And I'm still working on dunking, but my knees feel way better than I was back in my 20s because my mindset behind my legs and the exercises they post on their social media changed my life. So check them out. Or if you're in California and looking to get worked on the basketball court, let me know.